Namaskar, good evening, everybody who have joined here today. And just to introduce myself, my name is Bipindra. I'm the managing trustee of Center for South Indian Studies. We all have read in the newspapers about this unfortunate death of Stan Swami, who stood accused of promoting Maoist activities in India. He had been arrested with regard to the Bhima Goregaon incident, and since then he had been incarcerated. His bail was rejected sometime in March this year by the Special National Investigation Agency Court in Mumbai. The plea that Stan Swami had taken was his, old age and his health, deteriorating health, and he had sought a bail. But because of the charges he was facing in this particular case, the court analyzed all the submissions made by both Stan Swami as his advocate and the special public prosecutor in this particular case. After analyzing both the submissions, the court had rejected the bail. However, the Mumbai High Court allowed Stan Swami to be admitted in hospital, and unfortunately, he passed away. We express our sympathies to his near and dear ones for his death. However, this death has resulted in a huge narrative that has been created both on social media and in newspapers and in other, media outfits. The narratives have been on 2-3 lines. One is personally about Stan Swami himself, calling him an old man, a Jesuit priest, and also a human rights activist. And all these, beautiful jargons were used to describe him and claim that his life has been taken away. And the second narrative was that the government of both Maharashtra and the government of India were inhuman in not allowing bail to him or opposing bail to such a person. And that the system in India was so inhuman and bad that it needs to be changed. Please remember this first narrative about his old man, old age, and his Jesuit background was to gain sympathy for Stan Swami, and the second narrative was to create anger against the government of India, against the current political system that exists in India, the democratic political system that exists in India. And the third narrative was that this. Both these narratives were primarily was used by all these people who wanted to use it. But please remember that Stan Swami was an active member of the Communist Party of India, Maoist, which believes in armed revolution and overthrowing the present government, and also establishing a Maoist government at the center, inspired by the Chinese Communist Party's revolution that happened in China. So basically, it's a in Indian terms we call it as an Naxal movement or a Maoist movement in global terms. So he was part of it. But please, we have to remember that this narrative is also part of. These narratives were also part of the Communist Party of India, Maoist's strategy and operations to create anger against the government of India, the present existing system in India, and it's part of their strategy that they adopt. There was no sympathy for Stan Swami himself from the Communist Party of India, Maoists. It's all part of their strategy to achieve their objective of armed overthrowing of the government. The armed overthrowing of the civilian government in India, and also to establish what you call as the Maoist political power, capturing political power in India is the objective, and this objective is to be achieved through military means. That is the aim of CPI Maoists, and every means that can adopt, they wanted to adopt. And Stan Swami and all Professor Varara Rao and all these people who Comrade Sudha and all these people are part and parcel of their urban overground activist cadre. that further the objective of the Maoist organization, the Maoist political organization. For them, for all those who think that this objective is quite legitimate, I just want to take their attention to the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s, the 10-year Cultural Revolution the Communist Party of China executed in communist-ruled China for about 10 years, from 1966 to 1976, when Mao Zedong died. All these people who claimed to be overground activists were ultimately purged, which means they were killed by the Chinese Communist Party. They were all, after a point of time, all those people who call themselves as liberal, I call them as illiberals, they become only tools to achieve the political objectives of the Maoist cadre. And after a point of time, once they are used, they are thrown. And in fact, as happened in China, they are killed. So that is what the fate that was awaiting all these liberals who claim to be, who basically are promoting this objective of the Communist Party of India, Maoists. So this is basically the background about Stan Swamy and this political ideology. Coming to the special NIA court that rejected the bail, as I mentioned earlier, it had considered all the submissions made by both the sides before it had decided to reject this bail. It's not as though the Indian government or the Indian political system does not allow for the defense of anybody who is accused of a crime in India. That the entire process, the legal process, was adopted before the bail was rejected. So the findings of this particular NIA court are quite interesting. It completely, it says that Stan Swamy was an active member of the CPI Maoists, and he was the overground cadre. And for that simple reason, he cannot claim that he was not involved in this what do you call it, as conspiracy to overthrow the civilian government, to create disaffection against the Indian civilian government. That was the findings. It also noted that he was actively recruiting cadre for CPI Maoists, and also actively mobilizing cadre as overground activists for the CPI Maoists. He was also an ideologue. He was also fundraiser. He was also, he was actively involved. Basically, what I mean is that he was actively involved in this conspiracy. That is what is the finding of the NIA court. So, to explain what this Stan Swamy episode is all about, we have a very eminent speaker, Shri Bharat Amdapureji. Bharat Amdapureji is basically from Udgir in Latur district in Maharashtra. Welcome, Bharatji, to this event, and thank you for sparing your time and also for sharing your wisdom on the subject today. He's a Bachelor of Technology from Nanded SDG SIET institution, and he's also an MTech from IIT Delhi. So he's a highly qualified as a technologist, and also, as you all know, a technologist always has a research bent of mind. So he has done a lot of research. He's worked in Qualcomm India Private Limited in Bangalore for 3 years before becoming a full-time social activist since 2014. Presently, he's working as the coordinator for Vivek Vichar Manch, which is a research-oriented think tank based in Maharashtra. Bharatji, welcome to this event. I now request you to make your presentation.
So first, I will give brief background of Maoism, its aim and objectives. Then we will see its party structure and its modus operandi, how they operate in jungle area, how they operate in urban area also. Then we'll see their strategy in urban area, their main documents, and then we see what government says about this movement or what a banned organization. Then we will see this Elgar Parishad Koregaon Bhima case in detail. Then we will see what are the evidences against Stan Swamy and what court had said about this accused Stan Swamy. So basically, CPI Maoist is the banned terrorist organization. It is included in the schedule of the UAPA Act, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. It was banned in 2009. Actually, CPI Maoist was formed in 2004. Two organizations, namely PWG, People's War Group, from Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and southern region, that was active in that part. PWG, that was also left-wing extremist party or organization. And one more was there, MCC, Maoist Communist Center. Maoist Communist Center was basically active in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, and a few districts of Maharashtra. So the major development in this left-wing extremism came in 2004. These two groups, PWG and MCC, they merged. Few reports says that this merger happened on the direction of Chinese Communist Party. So their strength increased immensely in 2004 because the MCC was having control over few districts of Jharkhand, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, and that northern region. PWG was active in southern part, basically few districts of Telangana, few districts of Maharashtra, and MCC was active in northern. So they got merged in 2004 on the direction of Chinese Communist Party. So this complete corridor, what we call as Red Corridor, right from Pashupatinath to Tirupati, this corridor came under their influence. So this party got banned in 2009 and included in the schedule of UAPA. Now, what is the aim of this party? We won't go into the historical background or what were their major movements, major agitations right from 1925 to 2004. Basically, we'll remember one thing. Their aim is to overthrow this democratic system by means of armed revolution and to establish a Maoist dictatorship. That is their ultimate goal. So now how to achieve this? What is their modus operandi and why they want to do it? They believe that whatever inequalities we have, whatever fallacies we have in our system, those can't be removed by democratic way. Those can't be removed by constitutional way. There is only one way to establish a Maoist dictatorship by overthrowing this government by the way of armed revolution. So they have three magic weapons. They say they have three magic weapons. One is their party. Party consists of Politburo and Central Committee. In Politburo, there are around 15 to 20 people, top level body. That is the topmost body of this organization. And just below that Politburo, there is a Central Committee. Central Committee may consist of people from 25 to 30 people will be there in Central Committee. So this is their party. If you take both Politburo and Central Committee, at the most 50 people will be there. So this is their party. Next, their weapon is PLGA, People's Liberation Guerrilla Army. The strength of this PLGA, some report says that it have some 10,000 to 15,000 armed cadre. So this is the second weapon of CPI Maoist, PLGA. The third is Revolutionary Democratic Front. Now, this Revolutionary Democratic Front, they don't carry any arms in their hand. Basically, they work in public. So they may be banned or may not be banned, and they keep their names changing. So basically, they have three magic weapons: party, that is Politburo and Central Committee. One is their army, that is PLGA Army, and third is Revolutionary Democratic Front, unarmed, that is few organizations working in people. So when this party was formed in 2004, CPI Maoist, they formulated a few documents stating their objective, their way of achieving their aim. These 5 documents were formulated in 2004. Out of these 5 documents, 2 are very important if you, from the point of context of urban Maoism. One is strategy and tactics. of Indian Revolution. So they have described how to achieve their aim, how to work in urban area in this document, strategy and tactic of Indian Revolution. The second is urban perspective. Now we will see from their document only what they say in strategy and tactic of Indian Revolution. I will quote from their document only. So they say the central task of Indian Revolution is the seizure of political power. To accomplish this central task, the Indian people will have to be organized in people's army and will have to wipe out the armed forces of the counter-revolutionary Indian state through war, and will have to establish in its place their own state, the People's Democratic State, and will have to establish their own political authority. The very act of establishment of the state machinery of the people by destroying through war the present autocratic state machinery, they call this democratic setup as autocratic state. Through war, the army, the police, and the bureaucracy of the reactionary ruling classes. Reactionary ruling classes means the present system. This is the central task of People's Democratic Revolution of India. They say it as a democratic revolution, but they only knows how it is democratic, throwing the democratically elected government by means of armed revolution. How is it democratic? They only knows this, but they say it as a democratic revolution. But basically, it's an armed revolution. And they go on to say that they speaks about building the people's army, that they refer to PLGA army, which according to them, People's Liberation Guerrilla Army. The Central Committee provides political and military leadership to this PLGA army. The first weapon, that is Politburo and Central Committee. They provide the leadership to PLGA. PLGA follows the order of this Politburo and Central Committee. Central Committee decides the general plan, while the lower level commands draw the corresponding operational plan. It is mentioned in their discussion that People's Guerrilla Army was weak on that point and was confronting strong enemy forces. Enemy forces means our police and CRPF and other security forces. Therefore, there was a need to protect the leadership. The need to protect the leadership means their leadership stays in the interior part of the corridor. So they are saying that we need to protect our leadership from the enemy forces. Enemy forces means police, CRPF, and our army. So, and arms and ammunition in view of the party's final objective, defending the enemy forces. So that is their task. Again, further they go on to say, enemy's armed forces should be destroyed bit by bit by means of guerrilla warfare method. When sufficient arms were acquired, the PLGA should be expanded by going into new formations through development of platoons, companies, improving training and qualitative development of these into battalions and divisions. Next, further they say that the first, they mention that the urban movement was one of the main source which provided cadre and leadership having various type of capabilities essential for the people's war and for the establishment of liberated area. When they capture some area, they establish their dominance there. They say it as a liberated area, means the administration of our democratic government won't work there. Police won't have any dominance there. They call it as a liberated area, means area under their dominance is, according to them, is a liberated area. It is mentioned in their party must have a comprehensive line of revolutionary struggle, including armed struggle for the urban area also, in conformity with the line of protracted people war. Now, what is this protracted people war? Actually, they call it as a protracted people war or democratic revolution. This is just to confuse the people. They say that we are fighting on behalf of the common people, on behalf of peasants and on behalf of common workers, Adivasis, etc. So they call it as a protracted people's war. Protracted means it will take long to accomplish our objectives. Means it is not going to accomplish in a few days or right in a few years. But they said this is protracted people's war. People will fight this. CPI Maoist will lead it, but basically people will fight this war. That's why they call it as a protracted people war. The line of liberating the countryside. They say that we have to first liberate the countryside, then gradually encircle the urban area from countryside first, and then capturing the urban areas. So this is their plan. Why I'm mentioning from their document, we should get the idea that what is their modus operandi. Then only we will understand what happened in Elgar Parishad and how we can link that to CPI Maoist. So in chapter 3 of this strategy and tactic document, they say that the best elements that emerge through the struggle should go through a process of politicization in the struggle. Best elements should go through the process of politicization means the best activists from the urban area should lead the PLGA. They want recruitment from urban area because they know that unless and until we have educated people in party, the uneducated Adivasis can't lead the PLGA. The uneducated Adivasis are used as a armed cadre. They are at the lower level in the dalams actually, and who lead these dalams, those people come from urban area. So they say that the best elements that emerge through struggle should go through the process of politicization in struggle, ideological and political education in activist group, study circle, political schools, and consolidation into party cells. So what basically they are saying that we should have a study groups, study circles in urban area. Now we may see some study circles, study groups initiated by some NGOs in some universities or some colleges. By looking at them at first sight, we can't say that this may be related to Maoist or may not be related to Maoist. We can't say confirm that this is related to Maoist or not. But we should know this fact that they have this strategy to form some study groups in the universities and colleges. Now, in chapter 4, they say that they refer to military tasks. And they say that urban cadre was felt necessary to fulfill the need of the rural movement as they were required for various tasks involving technical skills, and the responsibilities were placed on the party organization for providing such cadre from urban area. Again, they say it is only by remaining loyal to the politics of proletariat and the ideology of Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, and maintaining its own political and organizational independence that the working class can give leadership and liberate the people from the sectarian nationalism and arouse them and bring them into the path of revolutionary national struggle in its true sense. That is as part and parcel of the new democratic revolution. Now, don't misunderstand this word, new democratic revolution. Actually, this is armed revolution. They call it as a democratic revolution. So, this is mentioned in their document. This document is actually very long, but I have mentioned only few things. These things are recorded in the court orders also. There are about 35 to 40 court orders in this Elgar Parishad case. I have gone through all these court orders. This is mentioned in many court orders also. So now there was an affidavit by UPA government in 2013. There was one case in Supreme Court. So Supreme Court had asked to give the affidavit regarding what is the situation of this insurgency, Maoist insurgency in the country. So the Home Ministry submitted this affidavit in Supreme Court. What Home Ministry mentions in their affidavit, they say that the largest and most violent Maoist organization in the country is CPI Maoist. The organization was formed in 2004. They gave this brief background, and this affidavit mentions 3 strategies of CPI Maoist. That is important to note. In the first strategy, it is spoken of waging a protracted people war against the Indian state through PLGA guerrilla force. there has been talk of capturing remote and rural area through these PLGA forces, then gradually encircling urban areas and capturing cities. This is the first strategy. Second strategy is to unite certain sections of society, especially those in urban areas, through mass organizations. These mass organizations are called as front organizations. These front organizations are directly affiliated with the CPI Maoist and operate under the gaze of NGOs to avoid the legal accountability. This is very important. We may see some NGOs around us. We may suspect that this might be related to CPI Maoist, or this may be the frontal organization of CPI Maoist. So we can get from this strategy. This is mentioned in the affidavit of the Home Ministry. What it says is, these front organizations are directly affiliated with the CPI Maoist and operate under the gaze of non-governmental organizations, that is NGOs, to avoid legal accountability. Using these, usually these front organizations are run by intellectuals, scholars, and activists who are completely dedicated to the ideology of the Maoist organization. Now, this is important. We may see some intellectual scholar activists in some universities like JNU, Delhi University, Tata Institute of Social Science, etc. These kind of ideologues or scholars are completely dedicated to the ideology of this Maoist organization. These organizations are seen extremely working on some human rights issues. Externally, we may see that these are working for some human rights causes, some human rights violations, and they are adept at using the legal machinery of Indian state to question the action taken by the security forces. Now, what they do is, suppose security forces had some encounter with this Maoist cadre in that corridor in the Chhattisgarh or Bastar somewhere. Now, and these intellectuals, these people from urban area who are actually dedicated to the CPI Maoist, they file some cases against the security forces saying that these forces have violated the basic rights of Adivasis. They are committing atrocities on these Adivasis. So they go to Supreme Court, High Court, and Supreme Court, High Court will issue stay orders on this action. So this is said by the Home Ministry. These organizations are seen externally working on some human rights issues and are adept at using the legal machinery of Indian state to question the action taken by the security forces. Also, they carry out propaganda to spread misinformation against the institutions of the state in order to achieve the objective of their revolution, armed revolution. Now, two more points are there in this affidavit only. This, and remember one thing, this affidavit was filed in UPA regime in November 2013, actually. So at last, this affidavit says, CPI Maoist thinkers and supporters in urban area have organized a well-planned campaign to create a false image against the state system and to spread false information and defame it. In fact, these are the thinkers. This sentence is very important. In fact, these are the thinkers and supporters who have kept the Maoist movement alive and in many ways are more dangerous than the cadre in the Maoist PLGA. Means these urban Naxals, these people who call themselves as intellectuals and champion of human rights, they are more dangerous than the cadre in the Maoist PLGA guerrilla forces. This is said by the Home Ministry in UPA regime. However, when action has been taken against them, when action has been taken against PLGA forces or CPI Maoist, the effective propaganda of CPI Maoist has led to negative publicity about the security forces. However, despite this, the government of India is committed to solve this problem by using all kind of resources, and the result of the efforts made by the government are being seen at the ground level. This was the affidavit in 2013 by UPA. So, and one more document is there. This document is of 18th February 2014 in UPA only, UPA 2. this NDA government was formed in May, June. This question was asked by one of the MP in Parliament, MP from Maharashtra. He asked whether under increasing pressure from security forces, the Naxalites ensconced in deep forests have started spreading their wings throughout the country by forming front organizations. Then in reply, the RPN Singh, MOS to Home Ministry, he replied that on occasions during operation by security forces, the CPI Maoist underground cadre shift to softer area, including urban area, looking for safe hideouts. Means when security forces take action against PLGA, these armed CPI Maoist cadre, these comrades, move to urban area for hideout. On such occasions, the overground frontal organizations provide safe hideouts to armed cadres. The frontal organizations also facilitate procurement of supplies, etc., to the Maoist war machinery. They also initiate legal action on various issues to slow down the enforcement regime. They are also adept at dissemination of propaganda and disinformation to demonize the state and the security forces. Of late, it has also come to notice that members of such front organizations are mentoring professional revolutionaries. Professional revolutionaries means full-timers to be inducted into the underground movement. So they say that when action is taken on the cadre, they move to softer area in the urban area, and these front organizations provide them all facilities for hideout. This was said by RPN Singh, MOS to Home Ministry in UPA regime. And this MP had asked some list of frontal organizations. He asked whether the government has identified such organizations working for Naxalite, which can be called as frontal organization. Then in reply, MOS to Home Ministry replied, and he gave the list of 74 organizations working in urban area. Actually, they are the frontal organization of CPM Maoist, but they pretend to be human rights organizations or working for some downtrodden people. But Home Ministry says that these are the frontal organization of CPI Maoist. 74. Now from Kerala, I will mention some organizations. From two organizations were mentioned in that reply. Revolutionary Democratic Front was working in Kerala also, and Revolutionary People's Front. So 74 in total. And Kabir Kala Manch, which was directly involved in the Elgar Parishad case, this is declared as a frontal organization of CPI Maoist. Now we should notice one thing. We should keep in mind this thing. Though these organizations are named as frontal organizations, there may be many more organizations which may be working as a frontal organization of CPI Maoist. They keep changing their names to avoid the legal accountability. That we should bear in mind. So now we'll see what happened at Elgar Parishad and Koregaon Bhima, this whole case. Now on 31st December 2017, the Kabir Kala Manch, which is declared as a frontal organization of CPI Maoist, and one more organization, Republican Panther. These organizations organized one program called Elgar Parishad in Pune on 31st December of 2017. They claim that some 200 organizations were are participating in this program, but actually Kabir Kala Manch and Republican Panther were the key organizations in this program. So some 3,000 to 4,000 around people were there at Sheniwar Wada in Pune. These people gave extremely provocative speeches there. Some dramas were played, and they provocated people for violence. And they took these people in Elgar Parishad to Koregaon Bhima on the next day. So the people who came to Elgar Parishad, they did not go back to their home on the same day. They marched towards Koregaon Bhima. Koregaon Bhima is a place a few kilometers from Pune, on the outskirts of Pune. So these people who were extremely charged by these provocative speeches, they went to Koregaon Bhima on 1st January 2018. Actually, there is a background for this Koregaon Bhima. In 1880, 1818, there was a battle between British and Maratha Empire, Maratha army. Actually, that battle was not that important. So the battle was actually between Maratha army and British. These Maoist people, what they propagated, this battle was between upper caste and the Mahar community, which was called as a Shudra. So they propagated this distorted history, they distorted the fact, and they claimed that Mahar fought from British side to eliminate the caste, and they portray this battle as a battle for annihilation of caste. But actually, that was not the battle for any kind of caste annihilation or demolition of the caste system. That battle was between Maratha army and British, and the people who fought from both sides, actually, the people were from all the castes, across all castes, from both the sides. But what Britishers did after this battle, they constructed one jestamb there, one memorial, and they wrote few names of the soldiers who got martyred from their side, and those people were from Mahar community. Actually, few more names are there which are from different castes, but predominantly they put up the names of the soldiers from Mahar community. Now these separatist people, these casteist people, and the few frontal organization of CPI Maoist, what they portray is this battle was for the caste annihilation, demolition of caste system. And this was the battle between lower caste and upper caste. So they propagated this distorted history for 3 years, right from 2015 to 2018. Now the charge sheet filed by Pune Police and NIA, it is mentioned in charge sheet. I will tell what has been mentioned in the charge sheet. Okay. As per the charge sheet, Elgar Parishad was held as per the decision taken in Eastern Regional Bureau of CPI Maoist in 2015. In party structure of the CPI Maoist, they have some divisional committees, district level committees, and lower cadre. So they have like Eastern Regional Committee, Western Ghat Committee. They have some triple junction committee for Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. For that region, they say that as a KKT corridor. Like that, they have one division called Eastern Regional Bureau of CPI Maoist. In the meeting of this ERB division, Eastern Regional Bureau of the CPI Maoist, they took the decision to organize one program by the name of Elgar Parishad in Maharashtra. And what was their objective? Their objective was to create disharmony in the society, to spread the false history and discontent in the people about the present government. It is mentioned in the charge sheet. The band outfit guided its operatives about different tasks, including acts of terror, as well forming united front comprising Dalits, tribal, and minorities. So there was their aim was to include people from Dalit community, tribals, and minorities in the Elgar Parishad. They did it successfully. When this Elgar Parishad happened, after a few months, when investigation started, this investigation agency found few documents from these people. There it was mentioned that Elgar Parishad, this agitation has been very successful. That communication is seized by the investigating agency. So Elgar Parishad was a design of CPI Maoist, and they had planned it right from 2015. So on 1st January 2018, there was a riot at Koregaon Bhima. I will not go into the details what happened on that day there actually, but we should remember one fact. In Elgar Parishad, highly provocative speeches were given, and these people who got fully charged in Elgar Parishad, they went to Koregaon Bhima, and on the 1st January, riot happened at Koregaon Bhima. Now on 8th January, complaint was filed by one person from Pune, and on the basis of that FIR, Pune police interrogated this case, and on the 17th April, Pune police raided the residence of few accused in this case. Those people were Soma Sen from Nagpur, Rona Wilson from Delhi, then Surendra Gadling from Nagpur itself, and Sudhir Dhawale, Harshali Poddar. These people were from Mumbai. So Pune police raided the residence and the working places of these people and seized few material. On the basis of that material, they applied section 120 to the FIR. 120 section speaks about criminal conspiracy. Now, on the same day, they did not get arrested on the same day, on 17th. On 6th June, Pune police arrested few people. Around 6 people were arrested on the 6th June 2018. And on the basis of further investigation, few more people were arrested in the August 2018. Now, after the arrest of these people, now this whole left liberal ecosystem started their propaganda in mainstream media that the present government is acting on the human rights activists. Present government is killing the dissent. This is the direct action on the democratic values of the country, etc., etc. They started this whole propaganda. Now, few people, this left liberals only, Romila Thapar and few more people, they went to Supreme Court, filed charge petition there, saying that this is totally a political, because of the political motive only, these people got arrested. These are very renowned human rights activists and scholars. So they prayed that this case should be investigated by the court. Court should monitor this investigation, and and the FIR against these people should be quashed. Now, what Supreme Court said, that is also very important. I will quote what Supreme Court said in that petition. Supreme Court says, by looking at the material submitted by investigating agency, Supreme Court heard submissions from both the sides. All arguments were done from both the sides. Finally, Supreme Court said, by majority decision, upon perusal of the said material, means material submitted by investigating officers, we are of the opinion that it is not the case of arrest because of mere dissenting views expressed or difference in political ideology of the named accused, but concerning their links with the members of the banned organization and its activities. This is mentioned by Supreme Court only. On perusal of the material submitted by the investigating officer, Supreme Court says that this case is not about the political dissent or difference in opinion or difference in political ideology, but these accused have active links with members of CPI Maoist and they are directly involved in the activities of CPI Maoist. This is what this material says. Further, Supreme Court says these accused cannot ask for changing of investigating agency. Actually, these petitioners had prayed that investigating agency should be changed. It should not be done by Pune police, because at that time in Maharashtra, Bhajpa government was there and they thought that this was totally a political crackdown on these activists and this government is acting on by political motives. So they asked to change the investigating agency, but Supreme Court says that no, accused can't ask to change the investigating agency. Means if you are accused, you can't say that who should investigate you, right? This is not your right to ask for change in investigating agency. This is what Supreme Court said. One more observation recorded by Supreme Court that is also very important. Supreme Court says, we find force in the argument of the state that a banned organization, CPI Maoist, organizes events to propagate ill will in different classes and turn them into unconstitutional and violent activities. Further, such activities were purportedly carried out by Kabir Kala Manch, Republican Panther activists in different areas in the state of Maharashtra by delivering provocative speeches and to spread false history, disputable statements, and incite objectionable slogans, sing songs, and play road dramas and distribution of objectionable and provocative pamphlets and books also. And the incidents such as at Koregaon Bhima and in nearby places, incidents of stone throwing, caste clashes, and arson incidents are the outcome of such conspiracy. This is recorded by Supreme Court. Supreme Court says we find force in this argument by looking at the material submitted by investigating agency. Means Supreme Court is convinced that prima facie the argument made by investigating agency seems to be true. Now, after that, these all accused, sometimes individually and sometimes together, they filed different petitions in different courts, right from Session Court, Honorable High Court, then Honorable Supreme Court also. But every time their petitions got rejected. Now it is very important to go through these orders. What court has said while rejecting these applications, that is important. What media is saying, what these left liberals are saying, that is not important. In any case, you can say anything in the media, right? But what court has said, what is mentioned in the court order, that is important. So I have summarized few observations. Actually, in total, some 35 to 40 court orders are there. But I have summarized. In summary, the court says, different court says, from the material seized by investigating machinery during investigation, prima facie it appears that the link of accused with banned organization and its activities. Accused are actively involved in the activities of CPI Maoists. And further court says material collected during investigation cumulatively shows that alleged acts of accused which travel beyond the gravity of mere disturbance of public order or even virulent nature, and many at times even transcend the frontiers of the locality and may include such anti-national activity which may throw the challenge to the very integrity and sovereignty of the country and its democratic quality. This court says that by looking at the material submitted by investigating agency, this case is not only related to Elgar Parishad, that what happened in Koregaon Bhima, what were the causes of that incident and what were the after effects of that incident. But by looking at the material, the scope of this case is not limited to Elgar Parishad or Koregaon Bhima, but this is a very huge conspiracy against the democratic setup of this country. And the scope transcends beyond the locality. Means it is not limited to only India. Few links were found which which shows that these accused are linked with the foreign powers also. Now courts further says, from the later communications, what can be gathered is that the accused persons along with other members of banned organizations. Other members of banned organizations means who are underground, who are declared, who are working for the PLGA directly. The accused people are not directly members of the PLJ. They are members of the CPI Maoist. They are working through the frontal organizations. But the material shows that these people are working through these frontal organizations, and they are working in coordination with PLG army of CPI Maoist. That is what court says. So this is very serious form of sedition which can be noted at this prima facie stage. Further court says the material placed on record prima facie denotes that accused persons are not only the members of banned organization of CPI Maoist. Now few people say that, this left liberal people say, mere membership of a banned organization is not crime, right? If I am a member, if I keep some material of that organization, now I am studying this problem, so I have a whole lot of material of this CPI Maoist with me. Now if police raids my residence and take this as a evidence that I am an active member of CPI Maoist, that is not admissible in the court. That is true. Any logical person can think this, that just because I have some material of CPI Maoist, I cannot be termed as an active member, right? Court is not that immature. Court can understand these things. But what did people propagate in media and in the public, that these accused people were having only few material, few pamphlets, few documents of CPI Maoist, and on the basis of that document only these people were arrested. But this is the simple logic that how can court keep these accused behind bar on the basis of only few documents? Courts explicitly mentions that these accused are not merely passive member of CPI Maoist. By looking at the material placed by investigating officers, prima facie, it can be said that these accused are the active member of CPI Maoist. So, further court says there are documents to show the link between Kashmiri terrorists and the banned organization. The material on record certainly makes strong prima facie case against all these accused. This was recorded by court, High Courts and Supreme Court at different times. So this is the background. Now we will see what was the actual role, what are the actual evidence against this particular accused, Stan Swamy. Now Stan Swamy, one of the accused, he got arrested in October 2020. Till then he was in NIA's custody. He died on 5th of this May. Now again this left ecosystem started propaganda that he was such an old man, why judiciary didn't give him bail, and he was suffering from many diseases, so judiciary should have looked into this case on human grounds. All that their propaganda, as usual propaganda they were doing in mainstream media. Now we should go in the fact. What are the facts regarding this particular accused? Bombay High Court says, in case of Stan Swamy, there is a sufficient evidence on record which authenticates the factum that PPSC was one of the frontal organizations. PPSC is actually declared by Home Ministry as a frontal organization of CPI Maoist. The full form of this PPSC is Persecuted Prisoners Solidarity Committee. Actually, Father Stan was given the responsibility that he should make he should help the people who got arrested on the charges of their being linked with CPI Maoist. So Stan Swamy was working through PPSC, the frontal organization of CPI Maoist. The court says there is a sufficient evidence on record which authenticates the factum that the PPSC is frontal organization which is being used for the furtherance of CPI Maoist agenda. PPSC was actually working to further the agenda of CPI Maoist. He was the founder of this organization. Stan Swamy was the founder of this PPSC frontal organization. And he was the founder of one more organization by the name Bagicha. And that Bagicha, that organization was working with one more frontal organization, Jana Vikas Andolan, which is a frontal organization of CPI Maoist. Now, court says, accused Stan was actively involved in the activities of banned organization CPI Maoist, and that he was taking steps in furtherance of the objective of the party by recruiting cadre, by raising funds, by creating chaos in the society, and by making attempts to overthrow the government and to establish a parallel government with military operations. The document recovered from the devices of this accused and other co-accused during the raid conducted at their houses were placed before the court. In that letter, it has been revealed that the accused Stan Swamy was in communication with one comrade Arun. This comrade Arun is an underground cadre of CPI Maoist, in which it was communicated that after arrest of urban CPI Maoist cadre from different parts of the country, especially from Maharashtra, huge irrevocable damage has been caused to the party, and in the future, they were required to avoid such mistakes. This is mentioned in that letter. Comrade Arun has wrote this letter to Stan Swamy. He is saying that as our cadre is being arrested from different parts of the country, especially from Maharashtra, our party is getting weak and we should avoid such mistakes. That is what Comrade Arun is saying to Stan Swamy. Now, this material collected from accused is sufficient to show their involvement and their activities in relation to the banned organization and the attempt to create unrest in the country. Now, one more letter is there. This letter was addressed by Prashant. This Prashant, he was also active member of CPI Maoist, and he is convicted. He is convicted in one of the case related to Maoist activities only. So this letter addressed by Prashant, the convicted accused, to the applicant. This applicant means Stan Swami. This letter is written by Prashant to Stan Swami. This states that certain money transactions have been taken place between these people. Not only this, he has informed the applicant, means Stan Swami, that a press conference and such other propaganda work will be required once the PIL gets admitted, and that the applicant was asked to invite eminent speakers to support PPSC venture. Means there was a case, it seems from that letter, and they were about to file some petition in the Supreme Court or High Court somewhere. And this Prashant is saying to Stan Swami that once this petition gets filed, we should ensure the propaganda against the security forces. And Father Stan is agreeing with his offer. Now the name, in that letter only, the name of Sudha Bharadwaj and Gautam Naulatka, other two co-accused in this same case, is mentioned there. And in reply to this letter, Stan Swami has informed that he would follow the suggestions given by Prashant. Further, he has appreciated the effort made by Prashant for PPSC. His father Stan was thankful to Prashant for his help to PPSC. Further, the letters dated 19th July 2017 and 5th October of 2017, addressed to Vijayan Dada, one of the underground comrades, by the Stan Swami, state that there was a discussion on the point functioning of PPSC. And remember, PPSC is the declared frontal organization of CPI Maoist. Now, one more letter is there issued by Comrade Arun to Stan Swami. Comrade Arun says at the beginning of that letter, Lal Johar. Lal Johar is actually generally used by the members of CPI Maoist in jungle area. On careful scrutiny of this letter, it would reveal that in the letter it was mentioned that after the arrest of urban Maoist cadre from different parts of country, including Maharashtra, huge irrevocable damage has been caused to the party, and that the directions issued by the party were not followed by the cadre. That's why they are getting arrested. They are committing mistakes. They are not following the orders given by the central leadership. And due to the same, heavy damage has been caused to party, and that in future they need to avoid such mistakes. This is what said by Comrade Arun to Stan Swami. It further speaks that the Deepak, one more comrade from jungle area, he is also underground, had asked the Stan Swami to submit the progress report in respect to his work assigned to him. Now, considering the aforesaid communication, now this is what court is saying. Considering to the aforesaid communication, it can be easily said that there is a prima facie material against the applicant Stan Swami that he was involved in carrying out activities to further the objectives of the banned organization CPI Maoist. In addition to this, there was one more letter which was addressed to Comrade Prakash by Comrade Sudha Bharadwaj. Sudha Bharadwaj is also under arrest. She is also one of the accused in this Elgar Parishad case. The first part of that letter speaks about the meeting that happened on 19th March 2017 at Nagpur. And that meeting was attended by Comrade Suresh Dashrath from Hyderabad, Maharuk and Ankit from Maharashtra. It further states about the cooperation given by Comrade Surendra and Comrade Soma Sen. Comrade Surendra Gadling and Comrade Soma Sen. These two accused in this case are from Nagpur. And there was a meeting in Nagpur in 2017. And Surendra and Soma Sen facilitated this meeting. That is what this letter says. It further states that Comrade Surendra had apprised about the cooperation conducted in the operations conducted in interior parts of Maharashtra and Chhattisgarh. Comrade Surendra is praising the activities of PLGA in the interior part of Maharashtra and Chhattisgarh, and that it was informed that they were doing great work against the enemies at the ground level. Means what Comrade Surendra is saying, our force means PLGA, is giving very tight fight to our enemy forces. According to them, our police, CRPF, and other security forces are enemy for them. So he is praising that our PLG is giving tight fight to our enemy forces. Now this letter again proceeds to say that it was resolved in the said meeting to give appropriate package to the urban and interior comrade as per their work. Likewise, the packages being given by the Kashmiri separatists to extremist organizations. Now, in that meeting, which happened at Nagpur, what they have decided in that meeting, like in Kashmir, these separatist people fund the jihadi organizations. So now these Maoists also have adopted that strategy to give some fund to their urban cadre and jungle cadre. Why? Because after the conviction of Sai Baba, Comrade Sai Baba was professor in Delhi University. He got convicted. Actually, he is in jail, and Gadchiroli Session Court has convicted him. He has appealed in Bombay High Court, but now he is behind bars. And in this letter, which is written by Comrade Prakash to Comrade Sudha Bharadwaj, Comrade Prakash is saying that because of the conviction of Sai Baba, our cadre is demoralized, and to boost their morale, we have to fund them like separatist fund jihadi organizations in Kashmir. So they took this decision in the meeting at Nagpur. In the same letter, Gautam, it is said that Comrade Ankit and Comrade Gautam Naulakha would be in contact with Kashmiri separatists. It further states that on 12th March 2017, an amount of Rs 50,000 rupees was paid to Advocate Pankaj Tyagi, who was the member of Anti-Operation Green Hunt Democratic Front. Now this Operation Green Hunt is conducted by security forces to eliminate Naxalites. Now their plan is to defend this operation by saying that security forces are violating the human rights of Adivasis. They are killing Adivasis by naming them as Naxalites. So to spread this propaganda, they had formed one frontal organization, and the name of that frontal organization was Anti-Operation Green Hunt Democratic Front. And 50,000 were given to one Advocate Pankaj Tyagi and his associates for arranging meeting to protest the conviction of Sai Baba and other comrades. Means to protest against the conviction of Sai Baba by saying that judiciary is also not able to give justice to the activists, etc. and etc. They had formed one frontal organization, and the CPI Maoist only funded this Advocate Pankaj Tyagi and his associates so that they can protest against the conviction of Sai Baba. On one point, this Stan Swami, there is a reference in that letter which states that Comrade Sudha has averred that the applicant, means Stan Swami, was appointed for looking after the work of PPSC. In that letter, Sudha Bharadwaj is saying that we have given this task of PPSC to Stan Swami, and that she had talked with Stan Swami for financial help, but Stan Swami did not assure. It states that Stan Swami was well aware about the activities which were being taken further by the co-accused. This is important because in court, generally there is an argument from the accused that the accused might have done some act, but he may not be aware that he is doing for the purpose of the banned organization. That may be the argument, but the court is saying that applicant was well aware about the activities which were being taken by the co-accused. So it is worthy to be noted that the applicant, means Stan Swamy, did not refuse to pay the amount. Stan Swamy did not refuse to pay the amount to Sudha Bharadwaj, but he did not give assurance. But he did not refuse. This we should remember. Now, one more evidence is there. There is document. The title of that document is Visthapan Virodhi Jana Vikas Andolan, declared a Maoist frontal organization by Indian Home Ministry. Now, whatever these frontal organizations are there, we should remember that these are declared as a frontal organization of CPM Maoist. That is important. The statement of facts by Stan Swamy, a founder member of the movement, states that Stan Swamy was associated with said frontal organizations of the banned organization. Means Stan Swamy was the founding member of this frontal organization, Visthapan Virodhi Jana Vikas Andolan. It is true that the document states that the applicant has tried to give clarification. However, the fact remains that the applicant is the member of the movement, which was declared as Maoist frontal organization. Means Home Ministry has declared this particular organization as a frontal organization. After that, Stan Swamy is working in that organization. Means he is aware that this organization is declared as a Maoist frontal organization. Still, he is working through that organization. One more document with title Pidit Bandi Sahyog Samiti was found, and the press release dated 14th March 2017 states that this Stan Swamy accused Stan Swamy, Sudha Bharadwaj, Partho Sarthi Ray, Megha Bahel, and other members of PPSC frontal organization have condemned the decision given by Gadchiroli Session Court, by which the court had convicted GN Sai Baba. Means they had arranged the protest against the conviction of Sai Baba and others for the offense under UAP Act. GN Sai Baba and few more comrades are convicted under UAPA by Gadchiroli Session Court, and Stan Swamy was arranging the protest against that conviction. And he was well aware that PPSC is declared as a frontal organization. Visthapan Virodhi Jana Vikas Andolan is also declared as a frontal organization. Now, one may say that in that he's an organization. Anyone can condemn the decision of the court, or like that some argument, someone may place that argument before the court, right? But the material and the exchange of emails, letters, and other material, few audio, video, CDs were also placed before the court. By looking at the whole material in total, court says that these members are not merely passive members of CPM Maoist, but they are actually active members, and they were full aware about what they are doing. Investigating agency has collected one more letter where coded names are mentioned, like SS. SS means like they use some short names. For Surendra Gadling, they will use SG. Like for Sudarshan, they will use S. So one letter is there addressed by Comrade SS to Comrade R. The letter states that Comrade R means Comrade Rona Wilson. The letter states that Central Committee to delegate more revolutionary members from struggling area to strengthen PR. This goes to prima facie indicate that there is a substance in the submission of the prosecution, means investigating agency, that everything was done by accused Stan and other co-accused secretly. It further speaks that after the arrest of Comrade Prashant, the movement was in dormant mode, and that Comrade Stan, Sudha had tried their best, but they need to consolidate and focus on the question of the release of political prisoners along their senior party leaders by any means whatsoever. It further states that the addressor and other member of the Central Committee have spoken with the co-accused Comrade Surendra, Comrade Rona, Comrade Gautam, Now this is clear that from these letters, it is clear that Stan Swami was working in coordination with the people from CPI Maoist who are actually underground, who are in the Central Committee and Politburo of CPI Maoist. The material collected during investigation would further state that Stan Swami had received 8 lakh through Comrade Mohan for the furtherance of CPI Maoist activities. The reference made in the aforementioned letter to the members being comrade goes to suggest that there is a force in the submission made by the prosecution that the word comrade was being used while addressing to the members of CPI Maoist. Now, these were the observations recorded by Bombay High Court when Stan Swami had filed a petition for bail. Now, court says that the record further discloses that there is an exchange of around 140 emails between the Stan Swami and other co-accused. Without making reference to each and every email, it suffices to say that there was an exchange of emails between present accused Ms. Stan Swami and other co-accused. This goes to suggest that the accused applicant Stan Swami was also in touch with other co-accused. This can be said to be additional link to connect the present accused Ms. Stan Swami and other co-accused. Court says that prosecution has submitted around 140 emails between Father Stan and other co-accused. And court might have gone through all those emails. Those details of all those 140 emails has not been recorded in the order. Now at last court says, by looking at all these documents and letters, prima facie it can be gathered that the accused Stan Swami, along with other members of the band organization, has a serious conspiracy to create unrest in the entire country and to overpower the government politically and by using muscle power, means by means of armed revolution. The material placed on record prima facie denote that the applicant was not only the member of band organization, means not only the passive member of band organization, but he was carrying out activities to further the objective of this band organization, which is nothing but to overthrow the democracy of this nation. Therefore, I means justice, I do not find merit in the submissions made by the advocate for the applicant that only because of membership of band organization, the applicant cannot be detained in jail. This argument is not acceptable. This is recorded by High Court judge. Ultimately, the authorities relied upon the learned advocate for the applicant cannot be said to be applicable to the present case. Further, in the order, it is mentioned that in the background of this material available on record, the mere fact that the accused Stan Swami was not present in Pune at the time of Elgar Parishad. Now, the advocate of this accused Stan Swami had argued that Stan Swami was not present in Pune, so there is no evidence against Stan Swami and his linkages with the CPI Maoists. Regarding that argument, judge has mentioned that this argument, mere fact that the applicant was not present in Pune at the time of Elgar Parishad and that he has not been named in the FIR would not take his defense further. He can't use this argument in his support. Considering the nature of allegations made against the applicant that he was the active member of the terrorist organization, the aforementioned facts cannot be said to be sufficient to tilt the discretion in favor of the applicant. In short, the High Court judge is saying that this argument is not acceptable that the accused was not present at the Elgar Parishad. By looking at the whole material produced by investigating agency, very easily it can be said that Father Stan is an active member of CPI Maoist and this argument can't be accepted. So, now the net result of the above discussion, whatever submissions were made from accused side and from the prosecution side, at last it is mentioned in the order, from the whole discussion, there is a sufficient material available against the applicant and other co-accused. There are reasonable grounds for believing that the accusations of commission of the offences are punishable under Chapter 4 and 6 of the UAPA Act. And so the applicant, Stan Swamy, cannot be released on bail. Now, this left liberal ecosystem is raising few questions about his health and his age. Regarding that, the High Court says at last, in view of the law laid down by Honorable Apex Court, Supreme Court, if seriousness of allegations made against the accused are considered in proper perspective, in that case, there will be no hesitation to conclude that, now this is very important, what has Judge mentioned in the order, the collective interest of the community would outweigh the right of personal liberty of the accused. Means, just because the accused is very old and he is suffering from few diseases, he can't be granted bail, right? So court will go into the details. What are the accusations? What offenses? What sections are applied against him? What is if that section? If the offenses are proved, what is the term of his punishment, etc. These all factors are considered in the court. Just because he's old and just because he's suffering from few diseases, that is not the ground to release him on bail. That's why court says that the collective interest of the society and country outweigh the right of personal liberty of accused in such cases related to terrorism. And such old age or alleged sickness of the applicant would not go in his favor. Means this argument would not go in his favor, because these are the very serious offenses, and the material placed before us shows that he is an active member. He knows that what he is doing. He is full aware about he is participating in the activities of CPI Maoist, and the objective of this Maoist organization is nothing but to overthrow the democracy of this nation. So by looking at all these facts and evidences, this accused can't be released on bail. That is what mentioned by the Bombay High Court. So this is all about Stan Swamy. Not only this, means it doesn't mean that all evidences are covered in this order, because the charge sheet is of few thousand pages, and only few documents are mentioned in this order. So it is very clear, it is very crystal clear that all these accused who are arrested in this Elgar Parishad case are active members. They are active at different levels in the CPI Maoist. Actually, they are the topmost leadership of this banned terrorist organization, CPI Maoist. And whatever the propaganda is being done by this left liberal ecosystem is very baseless, false. And in the Supreme Court, at the very beginning itself has told that it doesn't matter what you think about the accused. One may think that accused is very renowned human rights activist. He is very intellectual. He is a professor. He is a journalist. And but court says that it doesn't matter what you think about the accused. What matters is the evidence before us. And the evidence before us says that he is an active member of CPI Maoist. This case is not of the only political dissent or just of the different political ideology.